I believe. All right, YouTube, we're good. Stream me, we're good. And live me, we're good. All right, so we were going over part 3 today. Let me just share the stream real quick to people on Facebook. I can't copy the link and send it to you guys on live me or streaming, but that's all good. It's all good. Just waiting for OBS real quick here. OBS will overload. And we were talking about the Trivium, right? Guys on live me? I mean streaming. Where did we leave off yesterday? We were going to do part 3, right? I was getting into the Trivium and the left and right hemispheres of the brain. All right. Because I have a presentation here, so I'm trying to follow like the order that I gave it when they paid me to give the speech. You know, I'm trying to... We're going to begin in a second, guys. All right, that's shared to Facebook. All right, we're good to go. Facebook redirect. So we are on part 3. Now, just bear with me 1 second, guys. I got to see where exactly we were. I think we ended before the break at yeah. Okay, I know. Okay, I know where we ended at. All right, so let's go ahead and resume. So where we ended yesterday was about victims. We ended before the break yesterday at the concept that if there's no victim, if there's no actual wrongdoing has taken place resulting in harm to someone else, there is no crime. And many people are jailed for victimless crimes that they've actually never actually harmed another being, and yet their freedom has been taken away. Another aspect of this concept of the difference between right and wrong behavior is that we have to understand that there is no such thing as the ability to delegate a wrong to someone else. No one can save someone. You may harm him on a challenge or unaccosted, okay? But you're allowed to do that morally. No more than anyone can say a group of people may commit a wrongdoing, and they have the moral right to commit it, to commit that wrongdoing. There's no such thing as that, okay? So this is what many people who believe in things like government believe in, that we can delegate to a group of people who are calling themselves a government something that is not a right, and agree that all come together to agree upon that they now possess this right. Rights can't be granted by human beings to other human beings. Everybody is born with the same rights because rights don't come from human beings. Rights, like the laws of nature, come from the creator of the universe. They don't come from a human being. Human beings don't make up right and wrong, what right and wrong are. Right and wrong are inherent to creation and are up to us to discover and recognize what they are, and then live in accordance with those principles. So if a specific action is not a right for an individual. That action cannot be, quote, delegated, granted, or licensed to any other human or group and magically called a right. It does not become a right. If it's wrong, it remains a wrong, no matter how many people believe that they could do it or delegate it or otherwise. Sooner or later enough, a right can't be turned into a wrong. If it's a right and you're not harming someone, someone can't magically say that's a wrong and you're not allowed to do that. And we go right hand in hand with that, and it's called government. So an action that is a wrong, which would forever remain a wrong under natural law. So how do we know what rights are? Part of knowing rights is understanding that natural law, the difference between right and wrong, always holds true regardless of what a population's belief system. Like natural law being in effect, the difference between right and wrong are not dependent upon anyone's belief. They're eternal truths that need to be understood. So this means that it does not matter how many people agree that a wrong can be turned into a right or a right can be turned into a wrong. Such things can never be done in reality. Okay? We can believe that we could do that and act like that, but in reality, it cannot actually be done. A right forever or whatever remains a wrong, wrong, vice versa. People only can believe that, and this will magically make it so. Unfortunately, most human beings erroneously believe that it is morally possible for them to create and delegate a rights, quote unquote, which do not exist, or to take away actual rights from people which do exist. They believe we could do that. So when in doubt as to whether an action is or in not in harmony with natural law, the visualization exercise that I always ask people to do is to imagine a scenario of a planet, a world, where there is only two people, but there's only two people exist on an entire planet, okay? If the behavior in that circumstance, in that visualized instance, is either a right or a wrong in that instance, it remains a right or a wrong in any size population, regardless of how many people they may believe otherwise. Okay, so if a right is for one person to do another, or if it's a wrong, the action's a wrong for one person to take to another, population is irrelevant. Well, people will say, yeah, if there's a couple people, that will be okay. But a world of 7 billion people, we can't let people do that. Well, this has nothing to do with right and wrong, is as if they're changeable. Let's look at this scenario. So there's our world. We have our world. I'm gonna deal with my hands. There's two people, two businessmen, and we're going to look at it in an instance. Let's look at taxation. The concept of taxation. Is taxation of any kind a morally acceptable right or wrong, or is it something that is actually a wrong? So let's look at what taxation really is. And we're not going to euphemize. We're going to just talk about it straight on. So here's what taxation is. It's not what I believe it is. I'm getting into the heart of the matter and describing what it actually is. Taxation is the claim that a specific group of people who call themselves government have been given a quote right. They've been delegated a right. We've written down a law. This people calling them government and IRS have a right to do this particular action, this activity, okay, this behavior. They've been given a right to confiscate, unwillingly, I might add, an arbitrarily chosen percentage of the product of another human individual's labor. Now, let me just start with this, right? You ask anyone, how many of you are voluntarily gonna pay more taxes? No one's gonna raise their hand, because why not? I could barely afford to pay the ones I pay now. Why would I voluntarily pay more money to the ones I want? Quite frankly, I want my resources for myself to use as I see fit voluntarily. But the government says, and then, well, your taxes are going up by 5%. How many people will pay them? Most people would, because subconsciously or consciously, they recognize they're under coercion. They're actual under duress. They're being told that if they don't get this at the command of the people who are confiscating it, some form of violence will be conducted upon them, whether in the form of finding them and send more of their resources. We're going to throw you in a cage and make you stay there and throw you, make you stay there as long as we say, or by actually conducting physical harm upon them. So, again, we're saying that this quote unquote right is given to individuals who call themselves government, and then they have the right to confiscate this arbitrarily Trojan percentage of the product of another individual's labor. Because that's what money is. Okay, that's what, whatever we make through what we work, that's the product of our labor. We work and then we get compensated for it. So that's an exchange for labor that we have done. That's our property. We've gave labor in return for that. Okay, so this is done whether or not the other agrees to share that product voluntarily. It's not a voluntarily process. Coercion is involved. Taxation is enforced by the threat of violence, which is behavior that will result in bodily harm, or imprisonment, which is the taking away of physical freedom of movement. If it's seized and you resist, this practice is always, quote, justified, and the word justified also breaks down etymologically. The word justified means to create a right. That's what justified actually means. Just in Latin means right or the law, and then faceo or facere means to create or to make. So to justify means to create right, to make a right up and conjure it into existence. So it's always justified or made into a right, quote unquote, who those who unclaim a practice, they're trying to uphold the common good. This is a justification of it, or the seizure of the product of people's labor involuntarily. Now, if we are honest with ourselves and we define the concept of slavery, and I think this is a good definition of slavery, would it be fair to say slavery is the involuntary confiscation of 100% of the product of the labor of another human being? Would that be a fair definition? You're saying you're working, I'm going to take whatever you generate as a result of that work that you're doing. It doesn't belong to you. All of it belongs to me. So you work for me, I take everything that you have been able to amass or create through the labor that you have done. I think everyone watching, that's slavery. That's as good as the definition of slavery that you're going to get. Maybe we could come up with some other definition that involves coercion and physically shackling and keeping people. But if we're honest with ourselves, what is the purpose of slavery to begin with? Is to make others work for free and then take all the product of the labor. That's what slavery was conducted for. Okay, so if we're defining slavery as the involuntary confiscation of 100% of the product of labor of another human being, we should be able to clearly see that there is no magical percentage to which we could lower this number that would no longer make it slavery. So I ask people, if the person who's saying, I'm going to confiscate 100% of your labor and keep it for myself, say, well, I'm going to take 75%. I'll take 3/4. You could keep 1/4 of what you've created. Would that no longer constitute slavery? And I don't care what you say, I'm going to use the 75% for, okay? You're telling someone you have no choice. 75% of your labor belongs to me without no longer be slavery because they're allowed to keep 25. Okay, let's lower it to 50. Is it still slavery? Well, what percentage could it possibly lower it to be slavery anymore? Only 0. There's no percentage that it could be lowered to not constitute slavery. And again, if we're being honest with ourselves, many people want to justify themselves. Oh, it's used for services which someone doesn't right to refuse. I tell people, hey, if I said to you, I'm a computer technician. Do you guys own a computer? I'm now your computer technician. You're not allowed to refute my services. You may not refuse now that I'm now providing your service for your computer and keep it in good shape. First of all, what have I just taken from the viewers on streaming? The right to choose, free will, right there. That's slavery. I mean, not to keep, I could keep going and say, hey, if you refuse, or whether you want or you don't want my commuter services, I'm now your technician, and I need $200 every year, and I'll come over a couple times, and I don't care if you're happy with my service or not. If you don't pay me, I'm coming to take the computer. Now, is that really your property? If you're living under that duress, or am I just a violent criminal who's saying that, I'm going to steal your stuff if you don't give me what I say? I'm holding you under extortion. That's duress. That's called duress. It means I am threatening violence upon the person unless they conform to my will. And that's what we're all held under. We're held under duress. All forms of taxation are duress. It's a master class telling people that you have no right to refuse arbitrarily, anything that I deem that is necessary for what I say that it's necessary for. So how could you possibly claim that your home belongs to you if you're paying something called the property tax for the services that we provide in this community? You must pay this percentage, and if you don't pay it, your house is going to be turned over to the government. And then, you know what that's called? There's a term for that. When society doesn't actually have true private property ownership rights, and a higher class of masters actually owns the land and owns the property, and only allows the peasant class to live upon the property for as long as they pay tribute to the master class, who could tell me what system of government that is? That's called feudalism. And that's the United States government, and that's just about every other government on the earth. You live in feudalism. There's no such thing as democracy. There's no such thing as a constitutional republic, that's for sure. The de facto state of government, indeed, in action, is feudalism, and that's just another euphemism. It's a euphemism for slavery, okay? Because slaves aren't allowed to own property. Slaves aren't alone product of their good labor. That's all it really is. If we're being honest with ourselves, once again, there's my catchphrase for this section. Okay, we want to euphemize, justify it, call it something else, right? I say to the New Age woman at the UFO conference, and she said, again, I prefer not to see it that way. Well, you're not being honest with yourself. You're lying. You're lying. It's called lying to yourself. That's what cognitive dissonance is. It's cognitive dissonance. If we're being honest with ourselves, taxation is merely a euphemism for death, violence, and slavery. The practices upon which it's actually based, and since no individual or owner can claim ownership of it, such behavior can never be, quote, delegated to another group of people and then called a right. Therefore, it follows logically that all forms of taxation, I don't care, excise tax, property tax, gift tax, inheritance tax, income tax, I don't care what form it is, taxes on corporations even, all forms of taxation are always wrong according to natural law, because they're all based on the destruction of free will. They're based on coercion, and they're also based on violence, all of which are wrongdoing, all of which are form of theft, and all of which not one individual has the right to perform upon another. And this is what people want to justify and believe can be magically turned into a right, just because they want to euphemize it and call it taxation. Let's look at another example. Prohibition. One of my favorite. It's one of my pet peeves. I'm big into health, into eating right. I'm huge into juicing. It's one of my favorite things to do. Purification of the body is purification of the mind. Okay. But I'm going to tell you, I'm 100% for anybody being allowed being into anything into their body. If I want to break this up and eat it with a sprinkling of pepper, then that's my right to do so, regardless of what the chips or this will do to my intestinal tract. There's a reason I have the right to eat this if I wanted to. You want to know why? My body is my property. It belongs to me. Now, we did this in the natural law seminar. Do you own your own body? Almost every single student in the seminar that I gave, they immediately answered yes, they own their own body. Students grasped this. The people they were asking the questions to, because the students were doing the tabulation that I wanted them to do, accumulating the answers of people that they asked the questions to. And one of the questions I asked them to answer, do you own your own body? Almost every student in my first natural law seminar in Chicago, when they asked people if they own their own body, they came back to the next class, and almost every single student said, almost everyone that they asked that question to, paused for a long time and thought about it. Had to sit and think about this question. Could not immediately speed out absolutely that my body is my property. You know, because I think people want to overthink things. It's saying, well, am I going to own my own body forever? Or I'm going to die one day. Does that mean I'm going to own it now? What is the over-intellectualization and mystification of this concept? I tell people I recognize fully that I'm going to die one day. This flesh is going to crumble and pass into the earth. You know, okay? Does that mean I don't own my own body right now? I'm using my body right now. That's why I own it specifically. Specifically because my consciousness inhabits this body and I'm using it as a vehicle for the expression of my consciousness. It's the very reason I own my body, okay? And people can't spit that out. It's like unfathomable to me. The ridiculousness of some of this, that the human body couldn't be worked into the situation that it has been, is almost incomprehensible. So let's go forward with prohibition. It's the claim that a group of people who call themselves government have been given the right to prevent others from being any given substance into their own bodies. And if others refuse to comply with those terms, that they will be fined or imprisoned. And it should be self-evident that if an individual's bodies is actually their own property, and it is, then that individual always maintains a natural right to decide what will or would not be put into their property, which is their body. Why can you put what you want in your car or your home? Because you own it. It's your property. Technically, it should be. Technically, it isn't really. But my own point is that no one else can tell any other individual what you can and can't put in your home. Okay. You know, I don't want to put that jacket in your car. Or who am I not to tell you to put that? You can't put that in your car. It's your property. So why would we accept that? Not accept that, but I can't put something in my own body that I want deemed that I want in it. So people can't separate imbibing the substance or putting the substance in your body from that action that people may subsequently take. And they're two different things. So somebody might go out and want to get smashed tonight and do a bunch of drinking and coke. But if you then go out on the street and start clubbing someone with a blunt object, you don't have a right to do that. You have a right to go drinking. Any other right, then you want to bang some heroin or do some quote. I don't think they're good ideas, but I support your right to do it. But hey, after you do those things and you go and hurt someone else, you got to be held accountable for the actions you just took. That's what personal responsibility is all about. And these two things have to be delineated from themselves. We need to separate the act of putting it in my body and then me being personally responsible with what I do with my body. So understanding that this is a claim made to tell people that I'm going to make the decision about what you're going to put in your body. We occasionally see this theme or this right to command or will or will not be put in the body of another person. What it actually amounts to is a claim of ownership of another body of another person. If I tell you can't drink ownership, I'm making the claim your body belongs to me because I'm deciding what goes in and what doesn't. So if I say carrots are off limits for your consumption, sir, and they may not be ingested, I just made a claim that I own your body. Well, what's the claim of the ownership of another person's body called? Slavery. if we're not euphemizing it, and if we're being honest with ourselves, prohibition is merely the claim of ownership of another body is therefore it's just a euphemism of slavery that is backed by violence, regardless of the justifications of those that say that it's necessary for the common good. That's always a justification. Since no individual on nowhere on earth has the right to claim an ownership of another body, such behavior can never be delegated to another group and magically turned a right. Therefore, all forms of prohibition are always wrong according to natural law. Doesn't matter what the substance is. Doesn't matter what it is. I used to use opiates. It doesn't matter how destructive it is to the brain. If I want to take cleaning supplies and make some nice cocktail with some roach poison and some rat poison, stir it up in a water solution and glug 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 and just glug it. That's my right. You want to know why? Because I own my body. I own my consciousness and my body. Period. The end. So if I want to do that, that's my right to do so. No one has the right to tell me what I can and can't do to my body. Yet we accept this because of the justifications of the common good. Forget what rights are. It's for the common good. Because we need to accept slavery for the common good. Yeah, it works out like that. So how about licenses and permits? So this is what people claims who imagine one person making this claim to another person. No one would find this legitimate. No one would find that one person may make this claim to another person. Yet we think that these other person called government have rights that we don't have. That's called mind control. Okay? Mind control is getting people to accept some people have rights that we don't have. That's what it is. So go back to that visualization exercise. Can one person make that claim over another and have it and make it legitimate? Of course not. So if no one has that right, how could that right be delegated to someone else? It can't. Licenses and permits, they're claims that a group of people who call themselves government have been given the right, quote unquote, the right to prevent others from exercising specific behaviors, even if such behaviors cause no harm to others or their property, unless those others petition, meaning beg, or pay the government for permission. That's what a permit is. It means permission to be allowed to exercise those behaviors. This amounts to the claim that rights are actually merely privileges that may be granted or revoked by government at any time. Okay? Based upon the people in government's preference, their discretion. Okay? Remembering that the definition of a right is any action that does not cause harm to another human living being or their property. There is no such thing as the right, quote unquote, to stop another person from exercising a right. If something is a right, that mean it doesn't cause harm, there is no such thing as someone's right from stopping you from performing that action. That would be called coercion, which is a wrong. So the actual ingestion of, let's say, marijuana, for example, harms no one else. You can put that in your body, sit there perfectly peacefully, and not cause harm to another human being. That's called a right. For a very specific information, because it doesn't cause harm, I would not have the right to tell another human right, you may not do that action. That would be a wrongdoing. Well, it's the same thing for something when it comes to licenses and permits. You're telling people, hey, if you pay me $50, I'll let you smoke that marijuana without doing violence to you, unless I change my mind. And then I'll give you a permit. I'll just say, hey, you're not allowed to do that. Even something that is a right, like assembling and speaking. Like what was done in the state of Pennsylvania when the G20 visited in the city of Pittsburgh. I think, yeah. This city telling people, we have revoked the right to assemble and speak and petition for grievances. You don't have the right to come and speak. No protest will be tolerated, or we'll hit you with sound and water cannons, you know? And people just lay down and accept it. The whole city of Pittsburgh. Because we're going to go and ask them for a permit. And they just said, no, nope, you don't have that right anymore. We'll find you on the street. You're getting blasted with a sound cannon and deafened. Some people went permanently deaf, lost their hearing from what happened in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. You see the stuff that was happening in was in Egypt, where they're hitting people with water cannons recently and killing someone. It was middle in the Turkey, yeah. You know, hitting people. Some people died, got hit in the eye with such pressure that it hits the brain. People dead from water cannons, and they call these non-lethal weapons because they tell you you may not speak. We're gonna wrote that right, really. See, there is no right to stop someone from exercising a right. That's you making the claim that I make the rights. You're saying I'm God. I get to grant what a right is, and that's basically what it is. It's the amounts to someone claiming to be God. The claim over the rights of another person is called slavery. Even more so, it is the claim to be God. The claims of a knight's flow from you, pretty much. So therefore, licensing and permits are merely other euphemisms of slavery that are then necessary for the common good. Let's go ahead and take a break. We're going to take a quick break and we will return. We're just going to take a quick break and